Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's nice to be here. Hi, friendly faces. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Karen Petersburg, one of the vice presidents at PowerHouse Data Centers. Just a little background. I spent my career starting off in the subcontracting portion of the ecosystem, then moved over to general contracting, and then into commissioning, and then into the design of the data centers. And so now I get to work on campuses, overseeing the development from land acquisition all the way through commissioning. So it's a pretty exciting opportunity for me. And I'm really excited to be here. Talking about sustainability is kind of like my passion. I love it. And so I get really excited. So if I start to talk fast, forgive me. And so I'm happy to be here with my friend Liz. Do you want to go?
Yeah, it's nice to be here with all of you today. My name is Elisabeth Larsen. I'm a senior sustainability engineer at Bala Consulting Engineers. Really excited to be able to work with Karen today, and what we're going to really hit on and get into the details of is what I would consider an alignment message, an alignment of our sustainability goals and missions between companies, but also in the way we talk about our companies and then how we get into design and development. An alignment of the metrics and certifications that we have in our industry. You know, we use the phrase alphabet soup a lot, so having that alignment of those so that we can really rally around key metrics and move forward, but also an alignment of our industry and the action that we need to take to really create change moving forward.
So just a little bit about PowerHouse. Has anybody here heard of PowerHouse? All right, it's good majority. So I work for American Real Estate Partners. It was founded about 22 years ago, and there's like 4 different verticals within American Real Estate Partners, and people get very confused about this. So PowerHouse is just a vertical within the broader American Real Estate Partners, and it focuses specifically on data centers. So we've got a lot of land in our portfolio right now that we're looking to begin developing on, and they're in various stages. I oversee 3 campuses across the United States for over about $1.5 billion of investments. So you can see we've got a lot going on, there's a lot at stake. And so I'm really excited to be here to talk to you guys about what PowerHouse's pilot sustainability program looks like and what it's going to mean for the future of sustainability in our industry.
Just a quick intro to Bala. We are a full suite engineering consulting firm. So we do MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, structures, commissioning, technology, and I have the great pleasure of leading up our sustainability consulting services. We really pride ourselves on creating good relationships and leaving the communities and the world that we work in much better places, focusing on a lot of these firm values. We have over 40 years of experience working in, as I say, every vertical other than single family homes, but especially in the mission critical space. As you can see, we have a whole lot of services related to the design, planning, and engineering of mission critical facilities, and also a very strong relationship to the commissioning aspect, which really is a critical implementation for some of these sustainability strategies, which we'll talk about today.
All right, so our sustainability program, the bare bones, when I started at PowerHouse Data Centers about 9 months ago, this is what we started with, and what we're going to talk to you today is about where it's headed. So you guys can see the basic stuff's listed here. Everybody knows everything that we do here is pretty standard. You know, making sure the materials are, as carbon neutral as best as possible, being more conscious of what it is we're doing when we talk about designing the building and then developing as well. So we'll get moving into the next slide. So just a real quick overview. So I'm really into sustainability, and I had this wonderful conversation at lunch with John Brockwell, who then introduced me to Liz. And at that lunch meeting, she shared with me her sustainability index. And I thought, oh wow, that's really freaking cool. Look at this. Everything that you wanted to know about our data center development is listed right here. And it can be great as part of a marketing tool, so that the whole world knows what we're trying to do, and what our goals are, and what we're trying to achieve. The transparency is very key. It's so key, because if we don't all start talking aloud about what we're doing and showcasing it, we can't be the leaders in the industry that we are, right? And so it's really important to have a tool that does that. So I got really excited, latched on to Liz, and then from there we developed our sustainability program. So this conversation here is really about that program, what it looks like and what it means and what it will mean for the future of our industry.
Yeah, I just want to add on to the conversation around alignment. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different metrics. We've already heard about, how do we calculate PUE? Where is that coming from? Where are we metering? What kind of metrics? Is it just the energy efficiency, or should it also be looking at total energy? Our intention with using an index like this is to really have all the important metrics in one place, be able to rally around these metrics and use it as a design team and owner to then use it as a jumping off point for improvement. This metric and this index evolves over the course of the project. So not only are you getting to see your goals in real time with your decision making, but you're able to then show that to future tenants, the community, as you're making these decisions.
And real quick, just to jump in here, so PowerHouse, for those of you who don't know, we have a couple different products that we offer to our tenants. It's usually powered shell, or we can do a build to suit. So one of the key things that we want to do is be able to showcase what our powered shell basis of design looks like on paper to the tenants. And then we can then take the tenant's design and then show them what that looks like and what those differences are. So ideally, we're pushing the tenants to be more sustainable, but hey, if the tenants are more sustainable, then we know where we have to do the hard work. And so it's pretty exciting there.
Mm-hmm. And this is a case study example. We will dive a little bit deeper into how this looks for data centers, but they're traditionally characterized by having project details that's important to everyone at the top. Really three main metrics in the middle, that EUI and PUE, the OCI, the operational carbon intensity, and then the ECI, that embodied carbon intensity. And those are really the metrics that we're seeing everyone in the industry start to really align around. And then just wanted to highlight at the end too, there are high impact goals which can be modified for the project. So in some of the instances where we're doing retrofits, for office buildings, electrification is really important, and so we can modify it and improve based on the project type.
And speaking of transparency, real quick, ECI, right? When we, PowerHouse, talk to our vendors or supply chain, we want to make sure they understand that we do care about this, and we will be asking for their EPDs, and we will be pushing that question, and we will be expecting them to step up and meet these demands. So it's another really key way of showing that, hey, the industry cares and you guys need to do something.
Many of you are probably familiar with these metrics, but just wanted to, for those who may not be, or for those who are in a position to ask about these metrics, provide a little bit more detail on what this might mean and how this could look. So EUI is that energy use intensity. Often in the data center vertical, we're seeing the use of PUE instead, the power usage effectiveness. Both are a common metric to compare buildings in our industry. So it is a very important tool for us to understand as we are continuing to be a very competitive market. This is informed by a lot of energy modeling and other metrics like that. So if you are working with your design teams, make sure that they're completing not just the code compliant requirements, but really iterating on these points and getting you to your intended goal. It also can be a significant cost driver, as we've heard from some of the other sessions. So really important to prioritize not only at the beginning of the project, but throughout. The next metric is that OCI, that operational carbon intensity. If you're familiar with the greenhouse gas protocol and some of the requirements that will be around for SEC reporting for carbon emissions, that's really related to your scope 1 and 2 emissions, those on-site emissions, and also emissions from your utility grid. This again stems from a lot of your energy modeling analysis in addition to how you procure power. And this is a really critical metric as we're starting to see more building emissions laws go into effect. Many of you are probably familiar with items like BERDO in Boston, Local Law 97 in New York City, where they are putting emissions limits on all building types, and there will be fines associated if you are over those emissions. And they are using the metric of OCI to measure that information. And data centers are not excluded in those laws as well. So just really, it's an important metric for us to better understand and hopefully over time reduce through energy efficiency and the procurement of renewable power. And then the last metric that's really critical is that ECI, that embodied carbon intensity. This is lower in our data center industry compared to operational carbon, just due to the high energy use of data centers. However, as we start to ask for this information, we are not only influencing our projects, but we're influencing projects after us as well, creating more transparency around the carbon that's associated with the materials and the products and equipment that you're using in your building. So it's really important for us, even though there may not be compliance requirements yet for embodied carbon intensity, but to start to understand that and drive the industry forward. We can do that through specifications, reaching out to manufacturers, and by conducting what we would call a whole building life cycle assessment for our projects. So if there is ever a question about that, you can ask your design teams for something like that.
All right, so now get into the case study. So PowerHouse Reno, this is one of my campuses that I'm working on developing. It's a 3-building campus. We're getting power delivered in Q4 2025, and so the building will be stood up at the same time as power. So if you want to just quickly look, there's natural elements associated with the actual architecture of the building that meet the environment, so being cognizant of the community that we're in. We're using any of the stone and the rock that we're breaking down, really paying attention to the natural resources. And sorry. And so one of the big things that I care about, and I don't know if people heard me talk about this before, but mission-based ecosystems. It was a term coined by the World Economic Forum in 2021, but what it really talks about is how even though you build a building and as a developer you have a lot of people as part of that workflow, it's not a linear situation where this guy creates the material that gets put into the widget, and then somebody takes the widget, puts the widget together, and then somebody takes that widget, sends it to somebody else, right? It does work like that, but you have to think about it more in terms of a holistic ecosystem where everybody's working together. So with our project, we have the GC onboarded at the same time as the architect and the engineer, as well as our sustainability group. And everybody is working together to meet 4 main things: scope, schedule, budget, and sustainability. That's right. And everybody's on board from day one. And this is a critical aspect of what we do, is trying to make sure that everybody's working together collaboratively, because it's an ecosystem, not an ego system. That's what.
You can all hashtag that. So our intention with Reno specifically is to use the index to create transparency in the industry and also bring about that clarity of metrics that we've talked about in multiple sessions, making sure they are upfront, they're understood, not only from the design team, but also from the AHJ, from the community and others. We also then have that alignment of goals. As you'll see in a little bit, there are a lot of different sustainability goals. We are going for a Green Globe certification, their Journey to Net Zero program as well. So there can be a lot of different kind of intertwining goals, and through the use of the Sustainability Index, we're working to bring that all together so that our goals aren't lost and then picked up back at the end of construction documents. We also are trying to show, as I mentioned before, the evolution from this base building through design to really highlight the impactful choices that PowerHouse and the design team that you see are making throughout our design process. So this is a kind of first evolution of our Reno case study. We're really excited to use this with our design team to rally around these goals, make sure that we are hitting goals as they arise, and this will continue to evolve over time as we continue to identify goals based on location, based on community, and other such impacts.
So we just had our Eco Shred kicked off. So HKS is our design team that's working with Bala on the Sustainability Index side. And they did something called Nature in Place. It was fantastic. And what they did is they did a deep cultural and study about the local environment, the resources that are tapped, everything that's important to Reno, which is really important to us, right? We're sustainable developers. We're not just gonna go in there, dig up a bunch of land and leave it. No. We care about the communities that we're going in and developing. We want to be good partners. We want to be good neighbors. It is an ecosystem and it takes everybody. So one of the things that we just really want to showcase here is that when we think about sustainability, we think about the community. We don't just think about developing a building, wiping our hands and leaving, right? What does that mean? It means investigating what the community needs. What are the deficits? Can we help develop certain trade programs that'll help them and basically help us too, right? Get the workforce developed. There are a lot of ways that we can integrate into the community on a deep level, and one of our key focuses as part of doing our sustainability program is to really look at that in a deep way and find out what it is we can do to be conscious of our neighbors, so that when we have issues like in Northern Virginia where people don't understand the importance of what the data center industry is to the community, right? Because everybody here probably knows that we really fuel society. The data center industry is a utility for society. And without us, society would fall apart, right? You can't go to the doctor, can't get your leg amputated, right? People forget. And so it's important for us as a community here to remind people kindly and nicely that, hey, we're actually good people here trying to do the right thing. And so it's important when we do what we do to think holistically. And that's what our team is doing as part of the Reno Sustainability Plan. And so one thing I also talk about a lot is bringing the human back. Always looking at the human as it ends, not a means to an end. So if you meet people and you're out networking, you're talking to them, if you're in a conversation, a design meeting, it's not about what these people can do to help you progress. It's about how can you meet people where they are and all work together to get to a certain place. People need to be treated as people, right? It's fundamental. And we're going to lose sight of that as AI comes about. So it's even more important now to focus on humans and what that means. And that's a part of what sustainability is going to go. It's this drive to focus on humans, collaborate, bring everybody together to rally around the flag, and go together, march together towards the sustainability goal, because we're not going to get to journey to net zero without it. We can't. We need each other. So we have to think differently. I'm sorry, I'm talking like this because I just got back from a conference. So it sounds like I'm crying, but I'm really not. Maybe I am inside.
Well, as I mentioned, we are very proud to be taking on the challenge and also the opportunity of going for Green Globe certification, as well as being part of what Vicki mentioned, their Journey to Net Zero program. So as we build, we're taking on the goals and challenges of Green Globes. And for those, I think those are probably a little bit more familiar with Green Globes, but the Journey to Net Zero program is really a fascinating program where you are placed upon this kind of path or progression eventually to a certified 100% reduction in either net zero energy or net zero carbon. So it is definitely a journey. I think people are always trying to just get to, I'll do 50% and I'm good. Or I will hit this next metric to get a couple more points on my LEED scorecard or Green Globe scorecard. So this is really a progression over time on how we can get there. We may start and baseline somewhere in the on-ramp or in the recognized, but over time, that's our journey. So we're excited to be leading, the market and the data center market here with this new initiative. And it's exciting to see a lot of the alignment between the different goals, as we mentioned, that EUI, the PUE, that OCI, the operational carbon intensity, all are key metrics within the various programs that are important to this project. So being able to utilize the Sustainability Index to really kind of have that one face for it, while still having the depth of knowledge of all these other programs has been really good opportunity to move the project forward.
So you guys can see GRESB. How many of you have heard of GRESB? Oh, a few people, that's great. So I was just introduced to it, so I'm pretty excited about it. I love new things, but it's so much fun to learn. Anyway, our investment partners, which are pretty important people to any kind of real estate development, they are honed in on using this benchmark. And so what this means is that we're required to report out on a lot of our energy usage. And so that's going to become a talking point to our hyperscale tenants who traditionally don't want to disclose this information. But it's something we care about, and it's something that's important, and it's also something that GBI Green Globes tracks. And so you can see how, even though it's a benchmark, it's not a certification, it's basically saying, hey, how many of these boxes do you check and how do you compare against your peers, right? And we want to be leading the change. We don't want to be following behind. So for me, it's exciting because I want PowerHouse to be showing everybody in the data center development market that we are doing the right things. And we are caring about the environment, right? Because we do. We just, not a lot of people just don't show it well, I don't think. And so we're really hoping that the transparency between the Sustainability Index here and what we're trying to do with our investment partners will really help shake up the data center industry and let them know that, hey, the journey to net zero is a viable path. Let's all get on it together. Let's all do this together. It's kind of the idea.
One other really critical aspect to GRESB and the journey to net zero is that a lot of our design certifications stop once you construct the building. Programs like GRESB, programs like the journey to net zero are actually monitoring and tracking energy and emissions through use and operation, which we often know are can be two separate things based on what it's just designed. So having programs like this in place and really sticking with your commitment to track these metrics is really critical for us to continue to learn more about how our buildings actually operate, in addition to having that transparency throughout. We've mentioned a little bit about alignment, and I think there is a great opportunity for alignment in our industry today. We mapped out a bunch of different stakeholders, which are parts of traditional, mission critical projects. And it just starts with one person asking a question, starting by asking, have we looked at embodied carbon on this project? Do we know if there are, local, concrete suppliers that have EPDs or low GWP concrete? And that one question can then proliferate to a couple of your, close stakeholders, and then that proliferates further and further. So it really only takes one of us to start that question and have that conversation with your design team, with your owners, with your, investors, even with your partner or neighbor sitting next to you, just to have those conversations and start those questions. We really have the possibility to have this great, we're calling it the green sphere of impact, really have this influence throughout the market and beyond to some of the other verticals as well.
Yeah, and as you can see, we have PowerHouse front and center, and it's not an ecosystem. It just happens to be PowerHouse's ecosystem. No. But just imagine, imagine yourself here, or any of your friends here, right? It doesn't matter. PowerHouse is just a label, right? The point is, everybody has this opportunity to influence others. And if you really care about the environment and what's happening for your kids and their kids, right, you'll be that instigator. You'll be the one that asks the questions. You'll be the one that pushes the needle just a little bit further, right? We don't need to go 0 to 100. We just need to be a little bit better today than we were yesterday. And so it's just a matter of thinking along those lines and trying to help your friends get better, help yourself get better. And then hopefully the greenness will proliferate out and around the ecosystem. Now, I don't know how many of you guys recognize this picture. We'll date ourselves here. That's right, Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. This is our motto, right? Imagine a world where you take Buddy Reiser's tax economic plan, his tax development plan, and you take it to a third world country. You get the partners in place. You put a data center somewhere where there's a big need, and you start offloading waste heat. You start developing workforce. You start bringing in the ecosystem. You start generating economy. You start developing these third world countries and giving them these dreams they never had before. There's a way to do it if we're thinking about it in a larger sense. And so I just want everybody to be thinking about, what happens if you build somewhere new, in a new market, where nobody else has been, either in the United States, outside of this world, wherever it is. What can you do to help your community so that everybody is better off when you leave? So that just clarifies the why a little bit. I think I went into it maybe a little bit sooner, but you should think about what your why is, right? Why does it matter to you? And have that influence you every day. What do you care about? What's important? Is it for your kids? Is it because you like to hug trees? I don't know about you guys, but I love hugging trees. Their energy fuels me, right? I would walk around without shoes all day if I could. And in the office, I get yelled at, Luis will tell you. So we can't do that. But just if you know what your why is, you'll know what your purpose is. And you'll be able to use that to drive you. And it's just an amazing thing.
Yeah, once you know that why, what drives your mission, what drives your organization's mission, and where that comes from, you can then start to develop key metrics and be consistent and transparent with how you're reporting and how you're showing those metrics off to other people. And it's important for us to share not only our successes, but also sometimes our opportunities for growth, I'll say, when it comes to these metrics. So once you clarify that why, it's really important to be able to figure out how you can measure and then improve and evolve over those metrics as well.
And then once you've got your why and you've got your metrics, you need to build your team. When I say team, I mean collaboratively, right? I'm going to say it until I turn blue in the face, but it's really important. You have to have trust, transparency, and you have to believe in the end goal. You have to rally around the flag.
Yeah, like I said, that transparency is really important. Not only the successes, but also those challenges, lessons learned. Really important for us to be able to share those with each other today and in other industry circles, so that we're all growing, we're all evolving, we're all getting better.
And the last thing is my favorite. Be the change you want to be in the world, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. It's up to us, all of us, to make this world a better place. So, is that it? With that, mic drop?
Yeah.
Just kidding, I won't break it. Anyway, thank you guys for your time. Oh, questions? Sorry.
I mean, you can clap.
I'm going to pass the mic around for questions.
Thanks so much. I find this fascinating. It sounds like it comes from the developer or project to project. So as someone who is in local government and I have to vote on rezonings and these sorts of projects, I'm struggling just a little bit as to how we can ask for these sorts of metrics from someone who's coming in and asking us for rezoning or to have more FAR for a data center or something like that. What we hear, first of all, sometimes we don't know who the end user is, and it's like proprietary. And then sometimes we'll have the larger companies come in who are, the AWS's, the Microsoft, the Google, and they're like, well, our company's gonna be net zero by 2030. But we don't really have visibility into how they're going to do that, and we don't have visibility in the way they're doing it may not actually impact the community where that particular data center is getting built. They could be buying offsets and those sorts of things. So it's not clear to me how their net zero up here is kind of impacting or not impacting my community. And the other thing, and I don't know about other states, but at least in Virginia, we're restricted as a local government from even considering the power when they come in, right? We're not allowed to use the lack of energy as a finding for denial. So anyway, those are all my questions. So how, kind of like, how do we ask for that at the local government level?
Sure.
And how can a developer kind of prove to us that these sorts of things are good for our community?
I really love this question for a lot of reasons. And I'm going to be frank with you, there's no answer yet, because I don't think as an industry we've defined where we want to go. This is a problem about there's a lot of things within our industry that we don't have a single voice. We need a single voice, we need unity. Because that way we can say to you, as an industry we're doing this, and then you have a benchmark by which you can judge. And then you can start asking the questions that you're asking about. In the meantime, everybody's just trying to do what they can do individually, which might not satisfy you, because not everybody's going to be actually probably doing what they say they're going to do, right? Like, let's be honest, right? But I think if you educate yourself on how these metrics get formed, then you can ask those questions, and you can start digging into the methodologies by which they're using in order to get to that number. And so you might not have that number necessarily, but you can always ask them what they're doing to get there. I don't know if that's helpful at all. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I think it starts with that conversation. This is important to our community. This is what we want to know. We have similar conversations with MEP equipment manufacturers saying, can we get some EPDs? They're like, I don't even know what that is. And so then we explain it, we educate, we say why it's important to our industry, and we're having that, kind of trickle effect then, because now a lot of MEP manufacturers are actually looking at their equipment, they're identifying their supply chains. So I think it starts with that conversation. You might not get the answer right away. And it's also, I think, important to say we want to have an impact in our local community. Your global plan is fantastic. We love that, but I also want to know what are we doing project by project, site by site, and I think that's a fair question to ask.
I actually like it.
Yeah. Non-answer, answer.
I think there was a question over here too, and then I'll make my way over there, if that's okay.
Hi. I really want to applaud your metrics, and I really like it. However, as a consultancy, I was wondering, the third part of the metrics, the ECI, how can you say that we can assess the life cycle analysis, given that you stop at a certain stage of the project, while the life cycle analysis usually, how can you collect the data to later on say, this is how improvement on the long run will be happening?
Yeah, that's a really great question. The LCA kind of process these days needs a lot of clarification and I'm going to say alignment, just like Karen's going to say collaboration until we're both blue in the face. There is, often a lot of, we'll just do it through design, we don't actually look at how it's constructed. I think we're getting away from that with our certifications starting to require actual measurement and tracking during the construction phase. I think some of the long-term impacts, like when we eventually tear this building down or we're doing a renovation, where is it going? Those are things we're never going to know, but if it's in our LCA, hopefully then we can put it into plan or put it into policy. We often recommend that clients set up a purchasing policy as well, so that not only is it part of the design, but it's part of the implementation as well. I'm not sure I'm quite answering your question. The future is unknown, and someone could just demolish something and throw it in the landfill, but hopefully they won't, with the intention, the intentionality that you said at the beginning.
What might you hypothesize, or what do you see as some of the technical challenges, like in the physical real world? What have you seen any yet? And maybe it's an unfair question. Maybe we're just hypothesizing at this point.
In terms of what, getting information from people?
No. In terms of meeting the design challenges, like, have you seen, what do you think the biggest physical challenges are we're going to have to start dealing with?
Well, energy efficiencies, because of the increased density and lack of available water, right? So there's going to be a problem with the water use intensity or water use effectiveness in PUE, right? That's going to be a problem, I think, coming in the future. So, you know, I don't know if you want to jump in at all, but for me, with the AI as it comes into play and how much water requirements, I mean, I'm seeing some crazy numbers requested, and it hurts. Like, it hurts, right? Because you don't know if that water is going to be there. But that's the only solution we have right now. So I think one of the things we need to do as an industry is push the cooling manufacturers. No offense, I saw you, where'd you go? Anyway, no offense to Kelvion. But like, they're doing the work, right? We need to have more partners like that who are, there you are, thank you, who are trying to think about how can we make these cooling more efficient so that way we don't have these issues. But that's, to me, I think the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I would agree that, you know, utility capacity and our aging infrastructure is definitely a concern. You know, we've heard that it's a concern for multiple people. I think we have, as a species, scaled to the requirements that we need. So I'm, in my day-to-day, trying not to identify problems before they exist, kind of thing, create them in my head, and say that we can't do it or we can't make it. But I think that we have the ability with innovation and a collective desire to hit these goals, and that, you know, necessity to really hit them.
And I have to put in the glass is half full, right? We all work together. We can do anything. So there's really no challenge we can't overcome as long as we're collaborating. I don't know if that helps, David.
No, that's good. Water.
Water. Just don't use it all, please. Hug your trees.
It's a precious resource.
So I have a question. Sorry, my background's economics. So where's the business case in all your metrics? Because I just come from a CFO. He says, don't show me a box, don't show me an index, don't do sustainability for sustainability's sake or these grand culture goals. I want to see the index. I want to see the bottom line. Where's the bottom line, and how are you evaluating that?
I love this question. So I'm lucky. It's my campus. So it's my dollar. It's my bottom line. And so when I make the decisions, the design decisions that focus on those four things, cost is always part of that. And so there's going to be a trade-off at some point, right? But as long as that bottom number, as long as I make that bottom number, I can wiggle here, I can wiggle there, I can make some more magic here, I can, you know what I'm saying? So I have a lot of opportunities to get what I want sustainably and still meet my number.
So do you ever look at it from the other way around, where you say, if you do this, which is sustainable, you get a better bottom line?
Well, that's part of the analysis. So it's cost, schedule, sustainability, and scope. So you look at all four things. So what is it the basis of design requires? How best can I get there in the fastest, shortest period of time? What's the cost associated, and how sustainable am I going to be? So each design decision looks at all those four criteria, and then I can make the decision based on what makes the most sense for the project. And if cost is, to me, as long as my total bottom line doesn't move, I'm okay if it costs more. I want to do the right thing.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your passion towards sustainability. What do you, as far as the journey to net zero, maybe this is a question for the GBI folks, is there a timeline associated with that? So if you, like you were saying, your project you're bringing online in Q4 2025, do you have 5 years to get to net zero, 10, 20? Do you have to commit, or?
I think it's 2 years before you start. And you have to collect 2 years worth of data before they come out and start checking you.
Okay.
And then it's, I believe, and I don't know if Annie's out here or anybody else wants to speak, make sure I'm not lying, but then they recheck to make sure that you're not falling behind or not in agreement with what you've said you were going to do and where you're at along the journey. Is that?
It's not finalized just yet. We're about to go out for third public comment on the Journey to Net Zero program in a couple of months. But that is the intention, is that we will collect data every 2 to 3 years, just to evaluate your progress on that journey and hopefully, push the needle towards that 100% reduction, which is ultimately certification.
So I'm not sure, this might be more for the room at large, there's a lot of brain power in here. You mentioned a couple programs up in New York, and I can't remember the other location, about the targeted goal for certain benchmarking requirements for the energy usage of your buildings and your facilities. Have you actually seen those fines start to hit the owners and the builders? Because I feel, I'm here locally, mostly in Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC. I do a lot with the Empower Maryland Act, and that can seem to just be kicked down the road every couple of years. There's always a reason to not implement these fines and hold people to these promises. Is that kind of what you're seeing in these other programs in territories as well? Because I've been hearing maybe 8-10 years now, and I'm only 12 in the industry of what I've been doing. So my entire time I've been hearing eventually these buildings are going to be fined for not meeting these requirements. And I guess I'm kind of curious as to if you're seeing this actually happen anywhere.
Yeah, I can speak to that. In some of our other markets like Boston, Bordeaux, Local Law 97 in New York, we do see pushback, but I have not seen at least like Boston specifically, they have said no fluctuation, this is what we're doing. Obviously there's always going to be like hardship compliance paths, and they'll work with you. But both programs are set to start 2025, 2026. I have not seen any indication that they are going to back off. I think those cities have strong base for doing that. And then also we've seen in Maryland, like you said, the building energy performance standard, they just put into law, but then it got pushed back. But we also see a faster timeline. So yeah, I have not seen a sway in those yet, but their implementation is really in the next year or two.
New York has instituted fines this year, so Local Law 97 is starting to do
carbon emissions. So $268 per CO2 per ton of CO2 emissions based on your Local Law 84 data that they've been collecting for I think at least a decade now. So it's based on that. So the fines come into place now, and it's a tiered system based on the building size, building type. But I'm in DC, but mostly in New York, and building owners have been talking about it for a while now, trying to push back through BOMA and REVNY and whatnot, but to no avail. They're not able to. The fines are still in place for them. So.
Yeah, and to clarify, the emissions limits will start now, but then no one's seeing fines until the middle of next year. Yeah.
I just had a question. Do you find that your tenants or potential clients are asking for some of those sustainability features so that potentially that affects how fast you can get it leased and the bottom line is better?
It definitely helps when you have hyperscale tenants.
Karen, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so she asked if it's easier or helps speed up the process when you have tenants that are in alignment with your goals, basically. So we see that a lot, which is great because a lot of the tenants are pushing to be more sustainable, and so they are asking for these things too. So it just makes sense that we're doing it from the developing side of the world to allow us to meet the tenants' needs. Hopefully we're doing better and we're pushing them, but hey, if they push us, that's great too. But to your point, yes, it does totally help. It helps with the investors because we can say, look, this is what it would be if we do X, and here's what it would be if we do Y, but we'll lose tenant A, B, or C if we do Y, and it might cost a little bit more money, but it's definitely a conversation. It lets us have that one, right? So it's great.
Are you writing green leases with those tenants?
Good question. I'm not the leasing person. Sorry, but I've maybe.
Yeah, and a part of the program too is making sure that the data and those metrics are available. That's something that we've recently been talking about on how do we meter, what are they willing to work with, what are we willing to work with, and no doubt that will have to be a part of the.
Is that called a green lease?
It's a part, yeah.
I like that, yes.
I like that. Any final questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.